There we go. All right, so I want to like share like a little bit of my backstory. Um, my backstory, a little bit of like how I found you, Dr. Dr. Lynch was when I went through my miscarriage. I, tried to find different ways to like support and like figure out what happened. I ended up finding you on Instagram, and I started my functional medicine route to health, and then I found you. I actually emailed your office. They referred me to Dr. Shalise Pratt, who was my doctor for about like 2.5 years, and helped me figure out about mold toxicity and helped me detox. And I got pregnant after 2.5 years and had my twins. I'm sure I told you this many times, but
Nice.
I'm very grateful to you, and I always try to educate other women and making them feel empowered and intuitive, and let them learn more about their bodies so that they can understand how to help themselves through nutrition, through lifestyle, and genetics as like another component to really optimize their health. And I do have Hashimoto's, and I get very confused with how to support different things. And I know that there's a lot of people that follow me for thyroid and stuff like that. So I thought that we would do this talk and talk a little bit more about how to assess it and, address it the right way and optimize it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm glad things improved and you got two little ones. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Dr. Prout's incredible. She's very knowledgeable.
Yeah, I could tell.
Yeah. Yeah. She and I were just texting today, actually. So um, she was trying out the new brain nutrients. Uh, so yeah, how can I help you and your audience specifically?
So I guess tell everyone where you're based out of, and your past, and what led you down into genetics, and um how how you got
Okay.
into this. It's just a little bit of your background.
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of a interesting background, but cellular molecular biology from University of Washington and pre-med, graduated in 97. And then I took some time off and traveled South Pacific, Southeast Asia, not sure what type of doctor I wanted to be. And it was there that I kind of discovered what kind of doctor I wanted to be from an Ayurvedic practitioner, directed me towards naturopathic medicine. So I went to Bastyr and got my degree there. And while at Bastyr, working with patients, naturopathic medicine is basically the medicine where you utilize natural methods of lifestyle, food, environment, supplementation, medications, if needed, to support the patient to their health. And it's understanding of how the body works and supporting the body through whatever condition there it is. Whereas conventional medicine typically shuts the body down with antibiotics and antidepressants and anti-inflammatories and anxiety and all these anti stuff. They just try to shut it down. So, and at times those are needed. Um, but I didn't want to go down that route. And while Bastyr, I was introduced to environmental medicine. Environmental medicine really interested me because it showed how significant the environment is on our own health. And I grew up on a ranch in Central Oregon where there were crop duster planes flying over me and spraying the field literally across the street, hundreds of acres in size. And, they're across the street and I got sprayed. And I was also spraying Roundup and handling Casteron as a young kid barehanded, which is a anti-emergent type of herbicide, which is actually the worst, way worse than Roundup. I'm not even sure if Casteron is still around or not, but using it barehanded as a young kid is not a good idea. And spraying Roundup around 60 acres, spraying Canadian thistle for years in shorts and tennis shoes and tall wet grass also isn't a good idea. So I got pretty sick from that, and I didn't realize that the environment was so impactful. So while we're working with a patient, I noticed, or many patients, I noticed that, like you were working with Eve, where you're detoxing from mold, and these folks would be detoxing from heavy metals or mold, and we would put them basically through the same protocol, different patient, same protocol, same environmental exposures. Some got better, some got worse, some had no change. I was like, well, how is it that same exposures, same type of symptoms, similarly symptoms, different people would have different responses to the treatment? And I wasn't satisfied with the answers I was being told. I was like, well, there must be a cofactor deficiency. We're pushing all this sulfur on our patients, pushing all this phase one. Um, we've got to be looking at this, and maybe some people have a slow genetics in their phase two. So that's where I got into genetics because I was realizing if you had, say, Hashimoto's, um, the treatment for you should be for you. It should not be for Hashimoto's. So you go to conventional medicine, you have depression. Well, they have an armory of what? 5 or 6 different medications they can put you on and maybe send you to a psychiatrist. And that's kind of it. Um, and that's not it. It's far from. You could actually experience depression from a myriad of things. It could be as simple as a protein deficiency or a chemical exposure. So there was a environmental medicine case where an elderly woman was having significant dementia, but rapid onset. And usually dementia is slow, insidious progression. And she got a pretty rapid onset and it was getting significantly worse quickly. And so they're like, what the hell's going on? And finally, I don't know how it happened, but somebody said, well, let's go check her home. And then they put a gas meter in there and her hot water tank was replaced and the valve was leaking. So she was being exposed to carbon monoxide and natural gas fumes significantly, and that went away, and she was fine again.
It's how would one even know that like that's a problem?
Awareness is just awareness. I mean, there's reasons why health professionals go to school. That's why doctors, bust their ass in school for so long. The problem is conventional medical doctors are stuck. They're literally stuck in a dysfunctional system. And I don't blame them. I blame the system because when I used to do conferences around the world, I would invite health professionals from all over and they would come. And a lot of medical doctors from the US would attend my conferences. And they were very pissed off at the system. The insurance, you know, if you try to even get some type of scan, you have to get insurance approval. Well, since when do insurance companies dictate healthcare? Well, they do, and it's absolutely wrong. So doctors are put in a box, and you're put uh, on the back burner because the insurance companies are trying to save a buck and screw you out of your money that you've spent on insurance, which was required. So yeah, it's all very unfortunate. So now people are left to situations where they need to attend webinars like this in hopes that they glean a pearl that could be helpful for them in their journey. And hopefully someone listening will gain some type of insight that they can apply in their life and get some results like you did with your, miscarriage and then having healthy babies after discovering you're exposed to mold and had to get detox from it.
Yeah, so I mean, I live in New York, so like the whole system here is completely broken. I'm sure
Oh
you
yeah, for
uh,
sure.
just to find a doctor here is hard, but it's also hard to even find a doctor that's willing to, write the script to do labs. Even simple blood work is very hard to get here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why people are, you know, buying lab tests on their own from things like direct labs or let's get checked.com and getting labs that way. Because you have insurance, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really serve you unless it's a significant medical emergency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's I guess let's dive into like the whole topic, and the whole topic was really about thyroid and adrenals. What role do the adrenals and the thyroid glands play in overall health, weight loss? So, as some of the most common things that I see, like with people, is usually weight loss problems, blood sugar problems, I think some people who do have like issues with like synthesizing protein and absorbing it well and getting, the amino acids and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, so thyroid and hormone, a lot of people, you have a thyroid disorder, Hashimoto's or Graves or hypothyroid or hyper or whatever type of thyroid disorder that you have, they focus on the thyroid. And it makes sense because their doctor is focusing on the thyroid. The problem is you shouldn't be focusing on the thyroid because the thyroid is dysfunctional as a result of something. So by directly treating the thyroid, you will never get to the root problem. So, for example, if there's you know, your pot is overboiling and you had a lid on it, and you know, you you don't take the lid off, well, it's not going to help if you don't turn the heat down. So, yes, water is boiling over, and you keep wiping up the mess, but eventually you gotta address the root cause. So there's tons of books on thyroid disorders now. I mean, tons. Um, and I have all sorts of colleagues who are specialists in thyroid. So you can go so deep in thyroid, and they're more knowledgeable than I am in the thyroid dysfunction. Dr. Alan Christensen, um, you know, gosh, Susie Cohen, um, Amy Myers, um, and then
Isabella Wens.
yeah, Isabella Wentz, and then you got Eric. Eric, what's your last name, bud? Oh, he's gonna kill me.
There was a really good group that I actually joined, and there was a few books that they wrote. It was called Stop the Thyroid Madness.
Yeah, that was Susie Cohen, I think.
Yeah, that was a great group.
Yeah, yeah, I think that was Susie. Um, I forget Eric's last name. Starts with a B. Um, but yeah, oh, no, yeah, Balkovich. There it is, Eric Balkovich. He's a chiropractor out of Pennsylvania, super knowledgeable about thyroid, and he was addressing it properly. And, mold exposure will cause thyroid disorders. Environmental exposures are a big one. So, anytime, especially, I was taught in environmental medicine, and this is a big general rule for people. If you have multiple different types of hormonal problems, it's environmental, 100%. So, if you have thyroid issues, adrenal issues, um, estrogen issues, testosterone issues, whatever, all these different types of things, it is 100% environmental, and you need to figure out what the hell it is. And it's usually not one thing. There used to be a phenomenal website, which is now pulled, unfortunately. I was trying to remember the name the other day, and finally I remembered. I'm going to type it in and see what happens. But scorecard.org. Yeah, this site can't be reached. It's dead. But I used to help um, actually identify underlying issues in patients, because what this website did is I could type in your zip code and it would identify the top chemicals in your area. And then
Interesting.
you'd click on the chemical and you would see what biological systems that they would affect um, from your area. So I would just say, when you're focusing on thyroid and adrenals, please don't focus on the thyroid and adrenals. And you have to zoom way out. Like the book Dirty Genes is a perfect example of what you would do to support your thyroid and adrenals. And it's a very um, fundamental book and a very fundamental approach. And yes, I wrote it. Uh, it is a very good one, and it's very focused on environmental exposures. And my wife has Hashimoto's, and her antibodies come and go, and they come and go because of whether or not she cheats and eats gluten, whether or not her stressors are higher, whether or not her viral loads are higher from various different things. So that was another one. Chronic persistent infections um, will lead to Hashimoto's. So looking for underlying infections is a big one, either in gut or cellular. Doesn't really matter.
Where do you draw the line in terms of like saying like this is normal and this is not normal?
How you feel?
How you feel?
Yeah, I don't look at labs in terms of where you should be because lab testing is very weird. Um, so lab testing looks at a small subset of people and usually quote unquote healthy people, and they draw their blood and they say, okay, you feel good, you don't have symptoms, and these are the ranges that we found within this patient population. This is normal. And then we get 10 people who do have symptoms of hyperthyroid. It was like, oh yeah, their levels are this. And so they actually make their own ranges and they define them. And so the world is sicker and sicker, and it's getting harder and harder to find healthy people. And how do you truly define what a healthy person is nowadays when you're comparing people who are very, very sick to, you know, what's really, really healthy? I was told by a gold medal Ironman champion, 3-time winner, that a a grandmother, elderly grandmother walking the dog is healthier than a 32-year-old guy with bulging veins racing his bicycle. I was like, wow, that's a very interesting thought.
Hmm.
Um, so, um, but I draw the line with your symptoms, and it's because there was multiple times where I had worked with other doctors with their difficult patients, and for example, this doctor said that his daughter was uh, beating up nurses and was going to get kicked out of this home because she was too violent. And he said, I don't understand it. Her folate levels are too low. And so we keep giving her folate. And I said, well, how much folate are you giving? And he said, it was like something absurd. It was like 30 milligrams of methylfolate. And I was like, well, 30 milligrams of methylfolate is like giving jet fuel to a baby. You gotta stop doing that. It's like he kept saying, but her labs are too low. I said, well, ignore the labs, focus on what's going on. He goes, yeah, but I need to give more methylfolate because she's freaking out and her labs are too low. I said, you're not listening to me. Stop the methylfolate, give her niacin, and she'll be fine. He goes, what about the labs? I said, screw the labs, ignore the labs, focus on how your daughter is doing. And he said, well, I can't because the nurses want a set regimen of how much folate to give. I said, well, that won't work because some days she's going to need more and some days she's going to need less. And he goes, well, how do I know? So if she's sitting in the room, curled up and crying, she probably needs some methylfolate. If she's beating up nurses, she probably needs less. So adjust it. And so, uh, and he goes, how fast will this work? I said, within about 30 minutes after you give her niacin. He called me back and she was fine. And then they adjusted her protocol, not on labs, but how she was feeling, and she improved.
I had this conversation with someone who actually lives in Israel because there was a war there, and she actually reached out and said, "My antibodies are elevated. What should I do? What else could I do?" I said, "Do you eat fine? How do you feel?" And she's like, "I'm fine. I'm fine." And I'm like, "Okay, so why do we think that? Why do you think that's not normal if you're fine?
Mhm.
Like, wouldn't it be normal to see it stressed out when you're in the middle of a war?"
100%. Yeah, stress is the biggest factor for thyroid dysfunction, which is why commonly outside of environmental exposures like mold or heavy metals or chemicals in the environment um, are hurting it. So physical stress, emotional stress um, will be way up there in terms of uh, what you should focus on in terms of dealing with your thyroid. And oftentimes, I don't even, well, every time actually, I don't give any thyroid support to people with thyroid dysfunction. I give them adrenal support. I give them adaptogens. I give them glutathione. I throw them in saunas. I adjust their diet. I look for chemical exposures. I look for infections. Um, I don't do that anymore, but with my wife, for her, it's she has difficulty clearing different infections because I think some of her genes just don't do a good job of identifying infections and eliminating them. And then if you do something to try to eliminate those infections and you stimulate her immune system, then her immune system, once it gets stimulated, gets overstimulated. So it's like it's too cold and too hot. There's no Goldilocks for her. Um, and so it's really tricky um, when you have a patient like that. Uh, so in her situation, we just, you know, she's on low dose naltrexone, which has been very, very good for her. Um, she has to be good with her diet. I'm convinced that there's still gut bugs that aren't friendly for her. Her gallbladder is still acting up. Um, but she snacks all the time, and I can't get her to stop snacking all the time.
Sounds like me.
And so I got her um, Dr. Mindy's book, Fast Like a Woman. And I was like, okay, you want to listen to her husband? So I'll get her a book written by a woman. And she actually really enjoyed the book. Um, and she learned a lot, but she's still not applying the principles of not eating. I mean, insulin is very inflammatory. And so if you're snacking all the time and you're increasing inflammation, then you're increasing insulin, which then will have an effect on your thyroid and your adrenals.
Yeah,
So, you know, I'm not saying fasting is the answer. I'm just saying don't eat all day long and, give yourself at least a 2-hour window between eating to try to calm your insulin levels down so you're not causing so much inflammation.
right. So you talk a lot about the environmental stuff, which leads into the next question is more about like the nutritional impact of what affects thyroid and adrenals, which I think is usually really like blood sugar regulation and like you're saying, not snacking, not grazing, not eating late at night. Um, I know like also like not like sort of eating with your body clock is important and your circadian rhythm. Is there anything that you see like being the biggest culprits aside from like gluten and dairy,
Oh my God.
grains?
Yeah, tons. Um,
There's so
Paul,
much. There's so many limitations.
yeah,
Grains,
yeah,
nuts, seeds, like you can go as much as eliminating to that
yeah.
extent.
You basically just want to eat stuff that is on the planet that is designed for people to eat. And you can go i- hardcore there, or you can go medium core. I'm more between medium and hardcore. I'm not hardcore. Um, I'll eat, organic corn tortilla chips with salsa. That's pretty damn processed. Um, but I like chips. Um, I have friends who are extremely hardcore. Paul Saladino, um, super on point. I invited him over for uh, dinner when we are at Costa Rica, and we cooked steaks, and um, he just said salt only and no nothing else. He didn't have any vegetables. He didn't have um, you know yeah there was yeah it was just steak, fresh fruit, and that's it. So
Vegetables is a very hot topic. I know you just put a recent post out about like being low histamine and high histamine. Like in terms of like where do you stand with vegetables?
I it depends on how you feel, and Paul feels the same way. If you are eating and you don't feel good, then there's a high chance that you're eating something that your body doesn't like you eating. And when I say your body doesn't like you eating, it's probably your microbiome doesn't like you eating it. And so whatever microbiome you inherited from your mother, which is where it came from, and then it came from the environment, and then it got adjusted by the environment and the foods that you eat, because foods that are sprayed with Roundup destroy your bifidobacteria. Roundup kills bifido, just destroys it. And I think part of the reason why probiotics are so popular these days, whereas they weren't in the early 2000s or late 90s, probiotics were not that popular. And, um, they weren't even that needed. Um, but now with Roundup everywhere and antibiotic use, so high, and probiotics are super popular. Um, I lost my train of thought because I got stuck on that.
Vegetables.
Um, you remind me your question.
Your vet the your
Oh, the
take on
vegetables.
vegetables.
Yeah. So I you have to really what I call tune in, and some people are not good at tuning in. So you have complete awareness of how you feel after you do something. If someone punches you in the face, you're going to feel that. If you trip and stub your toe a little bit, you're going to feel that. You know, so if there's a slight wind out of the southeast, if you're not paying attention, you're probably not going to feel it. So if you eat a food and you puke from it, you're like, oh God, that was bad for me. But if you eat a food and 4 hours later you're tired and your joints ache, you're not going to know that that food 4 hours ago was affecting you. And then you're like, well, how in the hell am I supposed to know? Well, you can do a food diary, or what they call diet diary. Gag me. No one's going to do a food diary and diet diary unless you're hardcore. Everyone's too damn busy. I don't blame you. Then you do a food elimination diet. Oh my God. Really? Yeah. Really. A food elimination diet is basically eliminating foods that you commonly eat and you completely eliminate them 110%. There's no, oh, I'm going to eat it once a week or I'll take a bite of it. No, it is 100% elimination. And so if I ask, did you go gluten free? And like, yeah, I tried gluten free. It didn't work for me. I didn't have any improvement. Well, okay. Well, how gluten free did you go? Oh, I avoided all gluten. Well, did you avoid it for like every single day? Didn't you have a bite or anything with it? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, for how long? Oh, a couple days. No, that's not long enough.
No.
And so it takes true discipline. And what you need to do is basically you need to go through your house and literally either give away or throw away anything with gluten in it and get everybody in your home on board. And then you go gluten free and you don't go out to restaurants and you eat chicken and rice and steak and maybe some fruit. And then that's it. And then before you start, actually, you write down all the symptoms you're experiencing, every single one, with kind of a severity. And then you put that list to the side, you put on your phone, and then at the end of a week or 7, 10 days, 14 days is best, open that list and you go through that all those symptoms like, oh wow, 6 of them are completely gone. And so a lady, when I talked about going completely gluten and dairy free, she commented like a few weeks or a month afterwards on that same post. Somehow I saw her comment and she said, you know what? I went gluten and dairy free for 2 weeks, like you suggested, and I'm not allergic to my cat anymore.
Mm.
It's like, awesome. Good job. So you'd be surprised at how I'm still gluten free and I'm cow dairy free. I do drink goat milk and eat goat cheese and goat yogurt. Um, Sometimes goat kefir, but I do very well on goat products. I can't eat avocados and I can't eat lime. And so I avoid all of those. And I'm good with it. And people ask me, well, how do you walk by, or you're at a restaurant and you see fresh bread sitting on the table? How do you avoid that? How do you have the discipline to not eat it? I said, well, I don't think short term, I think long term. I don't think how good that tastes. I think how bad that's going to make me feel. And I just change the narrative. It's like I don't say that I'm missing out on the bread. I say that I'm relieved that I know what's making me feel like shit and I'm not exposing myself to it. So if you feel that it's more important for you to continue eating fresh bread on the dinner table, then continue eating the fresh bread on the dinner table and don't complain that your Hashimoto's is acting up. It's one or the other.
Right.
And that's the cold hard truth. And you need to make that decision. It's like, I'm sick and tired of Hashimoto's. I want it gone. Bread, you're gone. So you have to hit bottom enough in order to make that decision for some of you. And some of you, it's not that important. And my aunt, we were in a restaurant and she says, "Hey Ben, I got this sinus congestion. It's so bad." And I said, "Well, you probably should stop eating dairy for a couple weeks and see if that helps." She goes, "Oh, I love dairy." I said, "Well, then enjoy your congestion then." She's like, "Wow, you're nice." I said, "Well, I'm just saying." And she takes a bite of her pizza with cheese, and I think it was 5 years later, she messaged me on Facebook. She goes, "Ben," I said, "What?" She goes, "You're not gonna believe it." She goes, "My sinus congestion's gone." I said, "Oh, sweet." She goes, "I gave up dairy." I was like, "Good job." So, you know, it, I it's I've done this for so long that I know how important the fundamentals are. And it's you look at basketball teams, I've coached basketball, I've coached soccer, and I've had
Shaney, I don't
co-coaches.
even. I can I get off? I don't even know what I'm talking.
Oops. Sorry.
Yeah. And so I've had co-coaches who focus on plays and sophisticated drills and all these weird things. And I would just focus on how to pass the ball, how to receive the ball. And that was it. And the kids would get really, really good at passing. And then we were undefeated. Every single one of my kids' soccer teams, we were undefeated and we didn't cherry pick anybody. We just taught the fundamentals and applied the fundamentals. And it's the same in health. So don't my message here is don't go looking down a magic rabbit hole or a magic supplement or a magic genetic test or a magic doctor or a magic treatment of some sort that's going to cost you $6,495 for a 3-week treatment because it's all nonsense.
I preach
The
this all
health
the
is a
time.
four-letter word. It's spelled work, and you got to put the work in. It's like, doctor, I want to have strong biceps and a six pack. And if somebody says to you, "Oh, if you take this supplement for 90 days for $395, you're going to have strong biceps and a six pack and abs," and you're like, "Oh, that's nonsense." So, but it's hard to know what's nonsense in the world because there's so many people on social media and YouTube, and they get on Joe Rogan, they get on TV, and they sound like they really know what they're talking about. And then you get suckered, and it sucks.
It's easier to take a pill than to do the work.
It is. It's way easier. And man, I mean, I own a supplement company, and I design pills for a living. And I'm telling you now that it's more important to go gluten and dairy free than swallow one of my pills. Um, and you're like, "Well, why are you talking yourself out of business?" It's like, "Well, I'm not talking myself out of business because the supplements that I provide you help your body in terms of function. And if you're going to have better outcomes with the supplements I provide you, if you remove the impediment for your genes and your enzymes to try to function the way they want to function. So if you take glutathione, for example, and you feel horrible from it, well, then there's probably something else going on in your gut or somewhere else that you're not attending to, or you're not getting results from the glutathione. Like for in your instance, if you didn't remediate the mold and you just kept doing the sauna and the glutathione and whatever else and took all those supplements without fixing the mold, you would not have gotten better. And you
Yeah,
would say, "Oh, those supplements don't work."
yeah, no, I actually I got pregnant in the mold, and then when I was 4 months pregnant, I left because my father and my brother actually saw how bad it was, and then I left in the middle of it, and then I came back after I gave birth.
Good.
Yeah,
Smart. Yeah, that's mold is
tricky.
tough. I mean, I live in Seattle and it's a fight here. I mean, mold is everywhere except for high up and mountains and arid areas.
I didn't even see any of it. Mine was all behind the walls. It was in my attic, so you couldn't even see any of it. It's crazy.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, I do want to know what supplements. So this is like where I kind of like spoke about this with Dr. Pratt about certain supplements for, different common scenarios that you would see with someone like with thyroid and adrenal problems, which probably like in same relation to like your wife. Uh, like, I do jump same thing where I'm very sensitive or I could get very anxious and swinging back and forth with like this anxiety to then depression. Like just 2 weeks ago, something happened, and I'm like, holy crap! Like this is a stressor. Like it's not directly affecting the thyroid. It's like indirectly affecting the thyroid through like the neurotransmitter process and probably some of the genetics that I had, like, COMT and MAO, or histamine, HNMT or PEMT. I don't have a gallbladder either. So I was talking to her about it, and I was like, yeah, maybe you could get him to make a supplement for people that are, in this scenario that swing back and forth with undermethylating to overmethylating and have these pathways of like COMT and MTHFR. Um, yeah, so that, I thought that was like a good idea to try and do. But what are common scenarios do you see, and what supplements would you recommend?
Yeah. So I've been talking about MTHFR since 2011, and I don't have any specific supplements called MTHFR something, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. Um, I've been talking about CMT probably since 2013, um, and a lot of the other methylation genes. And I don't have anything called COMT or any of those
Yeah.
because I learned that MTHFR is one gene out of 18,000. COMT is one gene out of 18,000. And if you get stuck on one out of 18,000, I mean, how many 0.000000000 something percent is that? It's pretty darn low. Um, so having an MTHFR genetic variation or a CMT genetic variation can be a very significant find, but it doesn't mean that you dive to it and fix it. You still do the fundamentals. If I had a one-armed kid on my basketball team, yeah, I mean, I would still teach him how to pass the ball. Um, I would probably alter it, of course. But it's important to know your vulnerabilities, but it's also important not to focus on them um, too much because you cannot fix a SNP. Just because you have a SNP or genetic variation doesn't mean you're broken. It just means you're more prone or more vulnerable to something. You might be more prone to stressors. You might be more prone to chemical exposures. For me, I'm more prone also to fatty liver and gallbladder dysfunction with my genetic variations. I'm also way more sensitive to EMF and histamine than a lot of other people because of my genetics. And it answered a lot of questions for me. But do I treat those and swallow supplements every day for those? No, I follow the fundamentals. And stress is a big one. Infections are a big one. And so uh, for me, um, the biggest supplements that you can take are electrolytes, glutathione, a multivitamin periodically, not even every day, especially the seeking health multivitamins are too strong, um, at least for me. And Optimal Man, I will take maybe a couple capsules once a week or twice a week, and the serving size is 4 capsules. If I take all 4 a couple days in a row, I'm going to be more irritable and on edge. So I would look at um, symptoms for supporting adrenals and thyroid first before just general recommendations. But I will say for general recommendations, across the board for basically everyone would be electrolytes, glutathione in a small amount, not a large amount, but a small amount, like the glutathione lozenge that sits on my desk. I have that basically every morning. I have it sometimes later in the afternoon. I have brain nutrients later in the afternoon because I'm so cognitive what I do, so in my head. And then a probiotic. I do a probiotic in the evening, usually probiotics and mimics for me. Um, and then a fish oil a lot, but not daily. Um, those are my biggest ones
I'm
for
surprised you didn't say
supplementation.
optimal PC.
Optimal PC. Um, oh yeah, because I take gallbladder nutrients.
Also,
I
it has
take gallbladder nutrients almost. I probably take that 4 to 5 days a week, 2 capsules before dinner, um, and that does me well. If I don't do it, my right shoulder and scapula get tight. Um, my sleep gets disrupted. My tongue gets a more of a coating on it. Um, TMI, but your bowel movements should be dark brown and they should sink and they should be well formed and easy to pass. And you should have, ideally, kid you not, 2 to 3 bowel movements a day. If you put food in, there should be food going out.
Yeah.
So you should be having 2 to 3 bowel movements a day. And if you're not even having one bowel movement a day, then you definitely need something like gallbladder nutrients. And gallbladder nutrients, that's a great point, or optimal PC. But I like gallbladder nutrients better. I think it's more effective because it's a bad name because a lot of people will say, well, I don't have a gallbladder. Well, you still need it. Well, why do I need it? I don't have it. So I'm changing it to bile nutrients. And I'll pause here on bile for a second before we get into symptoms of adrenals and thyroid issues and what supplements for those. We'll get that in a second. Um, but these fundamental ones are really, really key. And if you've had your gallbladder out, you need gallbladder nutrients even more than than not. And that is because your gallbladder has been removed because your gallbladder was containing uh, bile salts that were thick and sludgy and mostly made out of cholesterol. You basically had cholesterol balls inside your gallbladder, and those are gallstones. So gallstones, the primary gallstone, I forget the percentage, it's very high, are usually cholesterol-based stones. And so if your phosphatidylcholine levels, which Eve was saying is like, why don't you take optimal PC, which is a great recommendation, because if your phosphatidylcholine levels are 2 times the cholesterol levels, that is an ideal component of bile. And if that ratio is lower than a 2-to-1 ratio, then you start getting cholesterol-based stones and gallstones and gallbladder problems. And then you had your gallbladder removed. Well, your gallbladder is removed, but your bile is still sludge. You just don't have the pain of the gallbladder not working like it should, but you still are making sludgy bile. And you probably still have digestive issues then, but you don't have the pain. So you have the loose stools and all the other stuff that goes along with gallbladder stuff. So if you take gallbladder nutrients, you are working on producing healthy bile that will then be released into your small intestine, and then it will process the fat. It will kill the small bacteria in your small intestine, and it will process hormones of thyroid and estrogen and other things that need to be processed and kicked out of the body, and you poop it out. Um, so yeah, that gallbladder is very, very underrated, underappreciated, and I'm talking about that uh, during our webinar end of this month is gut health.
So the other question was what are key supplements that someone can do to support their adrenals and thyroid, and like what are common scenarios that you would see the most?
Yeah. So number one, I would talk about stress, um, mental stress first. A lot of us are under mental stress and mental anxiety as well. They just kind of go hand in hand. I mean, I don't even know what the difference is between stress and anxiety. I mean, they are different. I would say I'm more stressed with all the stuff that I have to do. I'm not anxious about it. I know the difference between anxious, but it's hard to put into words. It's like you're on edge and yeah, it's just
Like
a weird feeling.
ADHD, like ADHD type. No?
Yeah, yeah. It's tough to put into words, but if you're more stressed out, then there's adaptogenic herbs which are very supportive, and vitamin B5 and vitamin C are very, very important compounds that you burn. You literally burn them up um, when you are stressed out, and those are very key nutrients for your adrenal glands. And so stress nutrients is a formula that I designed that has high amounts of vitamin B5, vitamin C, and a selection of herbs and high potencies that really take the edge off. And they take the edge off in a way that it's one of those things where you don't even know that you're calm or relaxed. It's not like you take an optimal focus or methylfolate and you feel, oh, I'm locked in. With stress nutrients, you're just calmer. And somebody will say to you, it's like, oh wow, Ben, you're a lot more mellow today. And you're like, oh yeah, I didn't realize. So it's one of those types of subtle supplements which I like. Um, and I don't take it enough. I should take that more, and I don't. Um, and I don't know why I don't. Maybe it's because I perform better when I have that little bit of stress, but it's not good. So I'll try stress nutrients tomorrow and see how I do with it. Um, and then if you're really stressed out and you're also on the anxious side, it lithium orotate can be phenomenal. But some of you are like, whoa, lithium, thyroid, there's, they fight against each other. It's like, well, they do. Um, and they can, but if you're very, very stressed out, that's also fighting with your thyroid. So, I would say the lithium orotate can be fantastic. One of my sons, the oldest one, was in his room studying for a final exam in high school, and he came down the stairs. This was years ago. He's like, Dad, I think I'm having a panic attack. I was like, I was just kind of shocked because he was so calm about it. And he was very serious when he said it. And I was like, all right. So I gave him the stress nutrients and I gave him a lithium orotate. He swallowed them and he didn't even come all the way down the stairs. He was like halfway down the staircase. And so I reached up and gave him the pills and some water. And then he went back up and sat down at his desk, or I don't know what he did. And then it was like 15 or 20 minutes later, I yell up top to him like most parents do in two-story houses and say, how you doing? And he's like, I'm good. I'm like, all right. Um, so lithium orotate is phenomenal. That is another underrated supplement. A lot of people feel that lithium is one of those things that they see in the movies is like, oh, that's really strong. That's a different type of lithium. Lithium orotate is totally different animal. And I I love it. It's like when I'm really stressed out, like I'm dealing with the city here on some absolute nonsense on my house. And every time they shoot me an email or something, I just get so pissed off at the absolute nonsense that they're doing. And there was one day I was so mad um, and anxious that I took a lithium, and that's rare for me, and I was good. Um, I didn't care anymore. I was like, sorry, city, I don't care anymore. Um, and so that's what I really like to do, because when you're emotionally stressed, you're taxing your adrenals and you're taxing your thyroid. Um, and Then the other one is if you wake up in the morning and you're absolutely trashed and you woke up multiple times throughout the night, you woke up during the night to go pee a few times or even once, then I like taking adrenal cortex, ideally around the time of your desired wake up time. So if you're waking up at 3 and staring at the ceiling, or 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning, and your wake up time is at 7, and you're peeing at night and you wake up unrefreshed, you take an adrenal cortex with a protein-based breakfast. You don't eat a carbohydrate-based breakfast. That's a recipe for disaster. You eat a protein-based breakfast, and then you take your adrenal cortex and possibly your stress nutrients combination. I talk about that a lot. And people have had tremendous results from that combination. One lady even reported her back pain went away. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Your adrenals are sitting on top of your kidneys, and your adrenals do help regulate water um, through a hormone called aldosterone. And if your adrenal glands are trashed, then you're going to not be retaining water, which is why you'd be also peeing at night. Your cortisol levels are what wake you up in the morning and override the melatonin, which gets you to sleep at night. And so when you wake up in the morning and you're feeling very trashed, it could be because your cortisol levels are bottomed out in the morning. And so you could do a salivary cortisol test. There's multiple different types of salivary cortisol tests. You should do a 4-stage salivary cortisol test where it's like, in the morning, and then maybe late morning, early afternoon, and then you have evening, and then they graph it over what it should look like. It should be high in the morning and kind of just progressively decline throughout the day. And if yours is low in the morning and high at night, you ain't sleeping. You have an inverse curve. And so you need to be taking adrenal cortex in the morning, and you need to take phosphatidylserine at night, and probably DHEA at night as well, to help invert that curve. And then you also need to figure out, I was like, okay, well, what are the stressors in my life? And there was some times when I was doing online consults and working with patients that my recommendations were pretty harsh. I wouldn't say harsh, but they were just honest. And sometimes it is very hard to face the true facts. And then when you have a health professional who really steers you to that realization, that's actually a great health professional to to have, because it's not easy to be so brutally honest. Um, Divorce was a couple of recommendations. Um, Moving from the city into the country was a recommendation. Quitting your job and getting a different job was a recommendation. Um, and I've given those three recommendations too many times, and a handful of people followed through, and those people thanked me uh, a lot. It was a tough one to go through for all of them, but when they did it, they all their health problems were gone. Um, so they were very, very happy with that.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't think women could handle like working like now every person, I'm sure every household is the wife and the husband, bringing money in and working because society today is just like very expensive. So you have women that are taking care of kids, and this is like mostly like what I see with taking care of kids, taking care of themselves, cooking, cleaning, and working on top of it. The stress load is like
It's so high.
it's so high.
It's so high. Yeah. There's a website, well, a tool on Google called Google Trends, and you can compare up to, I think, 4 or 5 different words, and you can compare the search frequency or whatever it is. And so the other day I was working with my publisher because I'm working on another book, and he's like, you should write a book on this topic. And so I typed it in Google Trends, and yeah, it's a lot of people are dealing with that. And then I typed in some other words, and I found other things which were a lot more people were dealing with than what he wanted me to write a book on.
Mm.
So stress was the top. Stress was the top. Anxiety was number 2. ADHD was number 3. Um, uh, I think, did I say depression yet? No, stress, anxiety, ADHD, depression. And then way below that was long COVID. And then below that just was inflammation. And
Interesting.
below that was like histamine intolerance. Um, so yeah, everybody is just stressed out beyond their, it's horrible. Um, and I do I do recommend the stress nutrients heavily, and I'm going to take that tomorrow and see what happens. Yeah, it's one of those supplements that are just so subtle that I don't even appreciate it, I think is why I don't take it. It's just, I love optimal focus and brain nutrients because, like, whoa, I feel on, or the electrolytes clear my head. Or the glutathione clears my head, but the stress nutrients just puts me on an even keel, and I don't appreciate that enough.
Actually, I tried CBD the other day, and it was a really strong one. I don't know if you know Dr. Tyler Panzer.
No.
He does more, he does also genetics as well, but through a different, I forgot what company it was. Um, but he does these evals where like he'll see like what SNPs you have, give you nutritional, recommendations, and then tell you what supplements are going to work for you the best. And mine was actually lower dopamine levels. So he recommended a CBD, and the CBD knocked me out for days. So I took it out, and like it took me a few days to like balance out. But I'm almost thinking to maybe try. I have the stress nutrients, and maybe to even try that one and see if that how that helps.
Are you low dopamine or high dopamine?
Um, I have
I mean, you can be both, but what do you tend towards?
ERD2. I have, and actually, when I take phosphatidylserine, it actually wakes me up at night.
Really?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Adaptogens also. Adaptogens. Melatonin gives me nightmares.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see the melatonin giving nightmares. There was a guy, a college kid. Um, he was really interested about the supplements, and I think it was my oldest son, the one who also had the panic attack. I told him about serotonin nutrients because my oldest also likes serotonin nutrients for sleep, and so he told his buddy who wakes up every morning with fatigue to try serotonin nutrients. So he did, and he had a good night's sleep. And then it was like a week after he and I were alone, just talking, and he's like, Ben, I need to tell you something. He goes, I've been having nightmares since I was a kid, and I would sit up basically every night in sweat, and I would sit straight up in bed, terrified.
Yeah.
And he goes, I take serotonin nutrients. I don't get nightmares anymore. They're gone. And I was like, God, what the hell is that? And I haven't researched it, but I learned a lot from people like adrenal cortex and back pain. I wouldn't have guessed that. Serotonin nutrients and nightmares, heinous nightmares. I wouldn't have guessed that. And then he told me another one, serotonin nutrients, and he's a college kid and a frat. And he's like, heinous hangovers, take serotonin. And then I did the research on that one. I did find that one. Alcohol raises your serotonin. Hangovers, you're
Right.
plummeted. So you take the serotonin nutrients and it brings your serotonin levels back up and you feel good again. Um, so yeah, that's an abuse of a supplement, which I don't like. Um, and I don't talk about that. Yeah.
There was actually two supplements I tried. Um, L-glutamine and a GI Revive that had green tea extract in it.
Oh, yeah.
I got so inflamed, like my ankle swollen, my veins were just like pumping and inflamed like crazy.
Yeah.
And I stopped taking it. I ended up figuring out that it was the histamines from
Yeah.
the.
And the green tea extracts and the pomegranate extracts don't do well with. I do not do well with those. Curcumin is also borderline for me. I can do a little bit, but I can't do much curcumin. Curcumin is fantastic for some people, but
Doesn't do
uh, I can't do much of that.
it, right?
Um, yeah, I know GI Revive and L-glutamine. That's why we don't put L-glutamine in one of our gut powder supplements. My wife actually was having a gut bug the other day, and so I gave her some of the optimal GI capsules, and they improved her. She goes, "Well, do you think the GI powder would be even better?" I said, "Yeah, probably." But she took that, and she got a headache, so she can't do the L-glutamine either. So there's a different type of glutamine called N-acetylglucosamine, yeah, I think it's N-acetylglucosamine that is very, very good for the gut. You also need it in gram doses, and I think that is going to be better tolerated. So I'm trying that. I'm actually changing that formulation right now.
Right. Usually for people like higher histamine issues.
Higher histamine issues or just higher glutamate issues, higher anxiety issues, lower magnesium. Yeah.
Um, the next question was, how can individuals work with their healthcare provider to determine the best approach for their thyroid and adrenals?
Um, Best doctor to work with to, like already talked about, is a doctor who's not going to focus on your thyroid or your adrenals. So to give an example, a patient walked in years and years ago when I was seeing them, had back pain. I said, okay, I did some history and then put them face down on the table and started stretching their psoas and their quads. They're like, Dr. Lynch, it's my low back. You haven't touched my low back. Yeah, I know. And then they got up afterwards and they were kind of, they sat on the table and like, well, what are you gonna do for my back? And I said, stand up. And they walk. Like, oh my God, my
Wait,
back
what'd
pain's
you work
gone.
on? Quads and what else?
Hamstrings and psoas. Yeah. Yeah. And she was shocked. And she's like, "You didn't even touch my back." I said, "Yeah, but all those muscle attachments were pulling on your back." So, yeah. So it's you need to think about how your body's responding to things and not focusing on what you think the problem is, because usually the thyroid and the adrenals are responding to some
Okay.
stressor. And it's usually infections, it's usually environment, um, and it's usually something that you know what it is. And oftentimes I would put that in my intake is like, what do you think is causing the problem? I mean, 8 times out of 10, people knew what it was. They just didn't know how to face it. So, or they didn't know how to verbally say it. There was one woman, all sorts of problems, and it took probably 3 months of seeing her before she finally admitted in a question, because she was not improving all the way, and she wasn't telling me something. And so one day I just looked at her, and it was silent in the room for a bit. And I said, looked at her, I said, "What's missing in your life?" And without any hesitation, she instantly blurted out, "Passion." And she started cussing about her husband and no, 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 no. And I just sat there and listened. And it was this was at Bastyr, and the supervising physician, she was so loud, the doctor came in the room, and she's like, "Is everything okay in here?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, everything's great." And and then the patient, she goes, "Yeah, I'm gonna go home and do this." And then she came in. I don't know how much longer, it was. Maybe it was 3 weeks, maybe it was a month, maybe it was 2 months. I don't remember. But I saw her again, and she was fine. She told her husband off, and they actually they started doing things together, and passion was back, and things were great. And then I didn't see her again for about 2 years. 2 years, I saw her name on the thing. I was all excited to see her because I was just about to graduate. And she came back. She was a pile of mess again, and worse. And she goes, "I want to be put on steroids." I'm like, oh, you were my case, my story of how effective and awesome naturopathic medicine is. And now you want to go use steroids. I said, "Don't you know what's going to happen if you use steroids?" She goes, "I don't care. Give me steroids. I can't be gluten free anymore. My husband's an asshole. I don't know what to do." I'm like, I think I walked out, and I think I just passed my supervising physician on to her. I said, I can't do this." Yeah. I was devastated. Yeah. But it's not about me. One thing you got to know about a health professional, it's not about you. It's about the patient's journey. You can be the guide, but it's up to them to decide ultimately what is best for them. And not every time can you pick what you should pick. And there's multiple reasons why you can't, unfortunately. But hopefully the time will come where you can make the choice that suits you best.
I just went through this like last couple of months where my cortisol was high, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell it is. I took this out. I don't have, no exposure. My diet's clean. I do all the basic stuff. And I'm like, what the hell could it be? I keep trying to like write down what is this trigger? What is the trigger? What is the trigger? I ended up figuring out that I was self-sabotaging myself with my relationship with money. And I had a very bad childhood where, money is used as like a value, or I'm sure there's a lot of people that also go through the same thing in terms of like money and growing up with money, or it being used as a tool that you end up using it as like a safety. So it's
Mm,
like, and then it's like it clicked, and I'm like, holy shit, I have to stop. I gotta fix this stuff with like my relationship with money. And as soon as I started doing that, everything went back to normal. My antibodies started going down.
yeah.
It's not something that people would ever think of or talk about. And like you're
No, it's
saying,
not. It's a very, very good point too. I mean, talking about money is such a taboo thing. Um, and it's there's a lot of inward pressure with it. Um, yeah, so good job. How did you get over it? Curious.
I took a business course that actually taught me, because I never knew, like, what are the steps to, building a business and knowing how to maintain it. Or I was always taught, like, oh, here, take this money and go do this, or this is how you do it, no, no questions. So I was never really taught that, ability to know how to manage it. Now I learned it, and and in the beginning of her course, she actually goes through like the inner childhood work and the trauma work around your relationship with money, and that was like the biggest thing out of the whole course. Like it
Hmm.
completely
Yeah.
changed everything.
Yeah.
It's like you're saying, it's like all the inner child, all the inner work, and what's your purpose, what are your values, knowing how to like differentiate like what's in your past that's affecting you now versus like what's your, you know, who are you? I was living in someone else's reality of who they wanted me to be, instead of me, living to what I wanted and what I valued. And that was the turning point for me. It was like, no, I'm doing this because I want to be happy, and because I want others to experience like what it is to feel happy and fulfilled and, empowered, not
Hmm.
limited, or that you can't, fix this issue with your thyroid, or, heal from this problem. And everyone's like overcomplicating it so much, when it's so like it's, what the problem is. Like you're saying, you just ask one question, like, what is the, what do you think it is? I'm sure everybody would know the answer.
Yeah. It's just, you know the answer, but leaning into it and stepping into it and stepping towards it is scary.
Yeah.
It's fraught with resistance. It's fraught with, oh, my partner won't like me going gluten free because they love gluten and they're going to tease me.
Yeah.
Oh,
Stupid stuff.
why do you care about them teasing you? Why do you care that they like gluten? We're talking about you here. It's like, well, I'm married to them. Well, yeah, I understand that. So let's go deeper in that. So it's there's a lot of things around gluten free. It's like, oh, I don't want to go to restaurants and people see me, you know, ordering and ordering something gluten free or ordering things that don't have gluten in them, and them asking, it's like, oh, you're weak. It's like, why do you care? And if you watch those videos of these young kids asking people how they're successful or if they're older, it's like, what was number one thing that you wish somebody told you when you were 18 and they're now like 70 something? Most of them say, I would say 80% of these shorts that I've seen, I don't watch them anymore because basically I got the message. Uh, it's like, your younger self, what did you wish you would know? It's like, you think people really care, what you think that people really care about what you're doing and it really affects you. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter at all. And Gary Vaynerchuk, I love him too. He's like, if you died, he goes, if I died tomorrow, the internet would probably go up and be crazy for a few days, maybe a week, maybe. And then everything's back to normal. So get over yourself. Just focus on you and don't worry about what all these other people are thinking. And it's a really hard thing to do. And it's very difficult for my wife. And I think it's very difficult for people with thyroid disorders because it's your throat. Your thyroid is by your throat. And that is where you have, and where voice comes out. It's where you share things. It's where you hold back things that you should release. So, what was that movie, The Green Mile, where that big black man would he would let all those flies out, those toxic flies, when he would help those people, whatever it was. And I thought that was such good symbolism. It was such a powerful, sad, strong movie. Um, but we're talking about this. And, some of you are probably thinking, why in the hell are we spending so much time on this? Because this is the true medicine that is deep, that does heal the thyroids and the adrenals. It's not the pills in the bottle. Those will help, but the underlying true things that are affecting you, your relationship with money, your relationship with how you're feeling about how other people think about you or what you're wearing. My kids would make fun of me about what I wear, and I don't care. It's like, Dad, why don't you change your car? I don't care. Like, what I care about, I will really invest my time and effort and money in. And what I don't care about, I don't have jewelry. I don't care about name brand clothes. I mean, this is probably Costco. Um, I just don't care. And what I value is nature, health, freedom, and good quality food and time with my family. And I love helping others, and I love helping people who really want to help themselves. And I do not like helping people who have no desire to help themselves. And I think I've made that pretty clear. I was actually going to dedicate the book Dirty Genes to people who read it and actually who implement what they read. Because you can read a book or you can listen to a webinar, but if you don't implement what you've heard or what you've learned, you're wasting your time, you're wasting other people's time. And I get that it's scary. I get that it's scary to take that step forward. Read the book Turning Pro by Stephen Pressfield. It's a very short, simple read, and I actually want to reread it. I don't know where that book is. I got to find it. Um, but Turning Pro is moving from amateur, and you're an amateur if you are not leading into what you truly want to do. So, for example, if you are a um, mother and you're home all day with your two kids and you're dealing with your kids all day, that is, well, it's a pretty amazing job for one, and give yourself credit. My wife was a stay-at-home mother, well, still is actually with our youngest. He's 15. So she's been a stay-at-home mother for God, 20 years, 20 plus years, and done a great job. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think it's an art and something that should be greatly appreciated. But where I was going with the Turning Pro thing, you do things that are easy and you think that you've actually accomplished something. So for an example, an entrepreneur, they can check emails all day long and respond to emails, but those don't really move the needle. You actually have to do something that really, really matters. Like for me, I have to design a new supplement that really solves a problem. But it's scary doing that. It's scary designing a supplement that people swallow and ingest that could have significant side effects or hurt them.
You know,
Or
I was gonna ask you if you would be, I don't know if you would ever like consider it doing it, and I don't know if you even have it on your website, but a way to, one of your books was one of the first things I ever read, like throughout my whole journey. I don't fully remember like what was in the book. I know there was the quizzes and understanding your pathways. I'm not so sure if I remember there was like nutritional recommendations or things like that, but like I feel like on the website, what would be cool would be to, let's say, someone who already knows like what their common genetics are, with the ones that you talk mainly about in the book, and then sort of like map out like what would
we
support.
are we are working on quizzes now, and we've created a histamine quiz, we've created a neurotropic brain quiz, and we're working on a gut health quiz currently. The 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 thing is with a lot of those gene based quizzes is you have to ask, it's more complicated than that.
Yeah.
I would be doing you a disservice. I would sell a lot of supplements and I would make it very easy for you to think that you're buying the right supplement. There could be a placebo effect of you buying that supplement, but I would feel very guilty knowing that I've left
Well, they'd have to be
90% of the
qualified.
picture.
They have to be
Uh,
qualified. Like if it's someone who, let's say, is following a good diet, like, and doing the fundamentals and the foundation,
yeah,
they still need something.
yeah, but it's our new histamine genetic report, for example, that's coming out. I've been saying that for a while now, and it's just like it's just right there. It's like, come on, people, you just finished the damn thing.
Yeah.
Um, it's it's about as close as I can get to specifically recommending particular supplements. And it's because I am also recommending food, lifestyle, environmental stuff. And I'm good with recommending supplements in that particular environment. And with the quizzes that we're generating, I'm also good with recommending supplements based upon the input that we're getting in order to generate the answers from these quizzes. Um, and there's a lot of supplement companies that people will program in, and it's like, and the other thing is too is you have to the FDA. I cannot ask questions that are very pointed. I can't say, do you experience nausea and headaches and dizziness or hair falling out or whatever, and say that's low thyroid. You can take this supplement to support a healthy thyroid, because the FDA is going to read that. And it's like, well, you're insinuating that this treats thyroid disorders. That's a treatment. That's an FDA um, violation. You can't do that. Supplements only support healthy function. They don't treat anything. Only drugs can treat. So that's also why we don't do it. There's a lot of supplement companies that disregard that rule, but we don't. Um, but our histamine genetic report will be very, very useful. And then we'll be making a brain, we're working on an ADHD brain stress report now as well. And so we are getting there. It's just taken me longer to get there because I had to first build out a lot of supplements and do a lot more research. I feel like for your baggage around money, I have baggage about being uh, possibly a good enough doctor, because I'll just say it here, my stepmother told me that I'd be a really shitty doctor. Um, she said it right to my face. And I was studying to be a veterinarian, and I was working with a vet, and she came to pick me up from the vet one day, and the vet was like, "Oh yeah, Ben is doing a great job here. We did multiple minor surgeries, and it went really well. And he said he's going to make a great vet one day." And she's like, "No, he won't. He'll never make a good doctor." And then I remember when I was standing at Bastyr, and the microphone was passed around our first day of school. And sounds like it was preschool. And the microphone came to me. I had no idea what I was going to say. You rehearse, 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 and the microphone finally gets to you after 100 and some people. Some just came out. It's like, "Why are you here at Bastyr?" I was like, "To prove my mom wrong." and and so it's good to have things that fuel you, to drive you, and through discomfort comes success, and you're not going to get success without discomfort. You have to have that discomfort. So I actually thank my mom for that statement.
Yeah.
And it makes me very careful about doing things, because I don't want to hurt people, and I don't want to make a shitty supplement. Um, so I don't know how many supplement companies do what I do, but what I do is, we don't sell just vitamin C. I mean, our stuff is pretty powerful. Uh, so yeah.
I've used all of them, and I have all of them. And I always have my clients using your supplements. And I don't
Good.
think anyone has ever had any side effects or reactions to any of them. So
Well, you're doing a good job of recommending them, then that's kudos to you as well. Because if you recommend the wrong supplement to one of our supplements to the wrong type of person, you're possibly going to get side effects. So you're doing a great job.
yeah, it's great. It's a really good company, and it's vegan. Also, I'm Jewish, so we tend to look at kosher certifications, but it doesn't have it. But some of them usually get passed on by rabbis saying that it's okay to use them because they're vegan.
Good, good. Yeah, and
Both of them.
yeah, and some of them might not be kosher, but I will say, and I will, my knowledge of kosher is very low, but I will say, uh, our quality standards are exceptionally
Oh
high.
yeah, big time.
Um, so, I know kosher is a different type of quality. It's not even a quality thing. Um, but it's something that I've been working on, but finding kosher uh, ingredients that, will work for some of what I'm trying to do, even don't exist.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
the ox bile, like ox bile is not kosher. I still took
Right.
it because if it's a medical reason, they still allow you to take it.
Good.
And some stuff like there's no histamine products out on the market that are not pork. Because I know that yours have like I think some of them have porcine in it, right?
Yeah. 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 The DAO is from pig, porcine. Yeah. And the ox bile and the adrenal cortex.
Yeah, so there's no, absolutely no, nothing on the kosher market for anyone with like a gallbladder problem.
I mean, herbs, possibly.
Yeah.
Um, but I haven't looked into kosher based herbs.
Not as strong
Uh,
as yours though.
what's that?
Not as good as yours. I was taking them at one point because I was really bad,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the only one that worked. The herbs were not strong enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm actually working on an even stronger gallbladder formula right now. And I need to, uh, I don't know what revision number I'm on. But that's what I do. I was like, the optimal focus was like 13 revisions. I think the testosterone one I'm doing right now is on revision 12. Um, because I try them for a while and then I release them. So that's one of the reasons why I don't have a women's multivitamin. Because women are so complicated and there's a lot going on and
Yeah.
I can test it on my wife. Um, and I probably should because she's kind of perimenopause now, and that is a big issue for a lot of women. So
Yeah,
I should be
I was
looking
gonna
into it.
say is because the last two questions were about like what are genetic pathways that support thyroid and adrenals and how could you optimize it?
Yeah, I would say that the
Do
ones
you
in
see
the
a common one like with people with like I guess with your wife like, or like with other people that you've seen with thyroid problems, like what are the common genetics you see and
the I'm seeing ones that predispose them to emotional stress, so slow CMT, slow MAO-A, and glutathione, SNPs, and inflammatory ones of TNF alpha and IL-6 and cytokines. Those are the those are the primary ones that I'm seeing with people with glutathione dysfunction and also histamine DAO is a big one. Um, if you have a very slow DAO, then you have high histamine in your gut, which then gets into your system, which then can affect your thyroid and your adrenals and everything else. Um, so uh, I would say those are the main ones. And I did have a video with Dr. Alan Christensen years and years ago about specific thyroid variations and MTHFR is a big one for thyroid as well. Um, so uh, yeah, and you can watch that video. You just type in Dr. Ben Lynch thyroid MTHFR, and it'll probably pop up on YouTube.
right. Um, it's very like your I think your wife, very similar to your wife. If like would you ever consider like creating a supplement like for her specific or like what have you created? I know you said you were creating some supplements for her. Oh?
Yeah, I've created a number for her. Joint nutrients that just came out was made for her. Thyroid really can affect your joints, so can high histamine.
Yeah.
Um, the serotonin nutrients I think that was designed for her, and she was feeling a little blue this morning, so she took it. She really likes the serotonin. She doesn't like dopamine one. Dopamine one was made for my middle son. Um, Focus was made for my youngest son. Um, Optimal iron with cofactors, which was stopped for a while, is coming back. That was the first one I ever designed for her. Provide a woman was designed for her. Um, Yeah, and then multivitamins. The prenatal, I made a prenatal. We got pregnant, but we didn't have a prenatal that we liked. So I designed a prenatal that we would have liked for her, and that would have been prenatal essentials. She would have enjoyed taking that because it's 2 capsules. She didn't like the 8 capsule one of optimal prenatal,
Yeah.
but we didn't have that when she was pregnant. She would have taken it, but she would not have liked it. Um, so those are the ones I would have made for her. But she would not mind a multivitamin for her situation now. But honestly, my knowledge of perimenopause and what herbs and nutrients to use and what amounts is lacking. So I need to improve my knowledge base of that first.
Yeah.
So formulating the optimal focus, serotonin, dopamine, and brain, that was 2 to 3 years of research before I came out with those. So, and the optimal electrolyte, I think that was 2 years. And the new one is coming out in, I think, 2 months. I screwed up with the last one because I was pushing so hard to get this one ingredient called hydroprime in there. And hydroprime is a great ingredient with a lot of great research, but it's a pain in the butt to work with. It's sticky. It causes clumps. It's kind of makes your drink thicker. It makes it sweet. It's just funky. So we yanked it, and we're putting creatine in there instead. And it's phenomenal. We had creatine in the old one as well, the original one. So, and we have ATP in there. But the new electrolyte is phenomenal. But I screwed up with the last one, which sucks. Sometimes you screw up. So, yeah. Research was great, and the pilots all worked great. But as soon as we went to main production, it didn't work.
All right. The last question was, what are common myths and things that you see with thyroid health? I guess like on Instagram, like
I
there's
would
a lot
say
of
the
different myths. Like really the main one that you really said, which was really stress and not looking at the thyroid as
I would
like
say if you have a thyroid disorder, yeah, if you have a thyroid problem, that you treat the thyroid. I think that's the biggest myth that I see. Um, you don't. You treat other things. And then the thyroid problem goes away. You treat your stress. You treat the infections. You treat the environmental exposures. You heal your gut. Um, then your thyroid stuff will go away. You cannot. I mean, you can treat the thyroid, and you get success, and you probably should be on thyroid meds or take a thyroid type of supplement to at least get you out of the doldrums while you're working on the underlying causes, because the underlying causes could take months to years to resolve. But as you find them and you start applying them, what's going to happen is you're going to start feeling better and better, and you're going to start getting irritable and anxious and not being able to fall asleep, and you're not going to know why. And what's happening is you're taking a thyroid medication and you're resolving these problems that it's affecting your thyroid negatively, and you're improving them, and you're on the same dosage of thyroid as when you did have those problems. But now those problems are going away, and you're over drugging or over nourishing your thyroid, and now you don't need to. So if you're working on your thyroid and you're currently taking a thyroid medication or a thyroid supplement, and you notice that you start getting symptoms that are new of anxiety, irritability, faster heart rate, weight loss, sweating, then you need to check your thyroid and taper down a little bit on your thyroid med. 75% down, 25% down, something, taper it down, and those symptoms will probably go away. You'll continue hammering and working on improving your symptoms, and you might have to taper again. And eventually, you might even come all the way off your thyroid meds. And nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about once you're hypothyroid, you're always on thyroid meds. No, not if you get to the underlying cause. If you're type 2 diabetic, you don't have to be on insulin your entire life. Change your diet, lose weight, add muscle, you're going to be fine. You don't need that stuff anymore. But you're going to have to taper off the meds, and you have to be mindful, and you have to have a good health professional to help identify. It's like, doc, I'm anxious, I'm irritable, I can't sleep, I'm hot all the time. It's like, oh, yeah, but we've been healing your gut, aren't we? And how's your gut? Oh, bowel movements are great, doc. I can eat now. I'm no pain. Bowel movements are solid. Things are great. Okay. What about the stressors in your life? Oh, yeah. Well, we moved out of the city. We're in the country now. Things are a lot better. I got a different job. Okay. All right. Well, let's check your thyroid. Whoa, your TSH is 0.04. All right. So we're gonna cut back on some of your thyroid meds right now. So that's a good health professional right there that would help guide you through that journey. And it is a journey.
Yeah, I think it's years and years. I'm not gonna
It
say
is.
years.
It's a
Years.
lifetime. Yeah. Because you could work on say you find out your TSH is 3 and you get on the thyroid meds, like, oh my God, I feel so much better. It's okay. Okay. Now I got to put the work in. Now I have the energy to put the work in. What's causing this? Oh, I got a root canal. I got an infection in my mouth, or I've got some, SIBO or something. Work on that. And so you work on these things, and then you can lower your thyroid med down. You get down to, whatever it is, and you feel better. And then a significant stressor happens in your life, and then you up it again. So, it's always like this. You're
Yeah.
never going to be perfectly healthy, in balance all the time. Something is always trying to push you off that stool. So you just got to be ready for it, and be okay with it. I mean, it sucks getting knocked off all the time, but just be mindful that, I always joked with my wife when I was growing the business. It's like, oh, I just have one more big thing to do. And, I get this one big program installed, and, I set up the warehouse, will be good. And she just laughs now. I just had that conversation with her, I think yesterday or 2 days ago. I say, remember that time years ago? I said, when we just get this new label printer set up in in the warehouse, so it's going to be a lot easier. Yeah, how many different label machines we've had since, and different shipping softwares since, and oh yeah, it's just ongoing.
Always something to improve. Yeah.
Always. Yeah, always. But thankfully we got a great team, and surround yourself with great people who help you, and yeah, put more confidence in yourself, and surround yourself with people who, you know, respect you and appreciate you, and that's important.
It's really good advice. I always say this also, like, there's no start date, there's no end date to health. It's always going to be up and down. You just have to know how to support your body through nutrition, through, foundations, and getting to know your body better, and understanding when you need something and when you don't need something, and when you need more support, when you don't need as much support. So exactly like you said.
Hmm. Yeah.
But thank you so much for doing this, and it's a pleasure speaking to you about all these little details. I think it's very, very valuable. You're an amazing doctor that's changed my life, and I'm sure you've already changed like millions of lives, if not
Yeah.
more.
Well, it's
So
always fun hearing stories, and it never gets old, of how my work somehow helps somebody, and either directly or indirectly. So yeah, never gets old. And I I always tell myself, it's like, why do I don't tell myself why do I keep going, but people ask me why do I keep going, and it's like, well, I feel like it's still day one of what I've been trying to do, and I haven't accomplished what I wanted to accomplish yet. And part of it is creating reports so people really know, really refine and guide them without having me being there, to knowing exactly what to do in various situations, and what things to do for their food, lifestyle, environment, and what supplements to take. And so we're currently refining that, and until we get to that point, um, people are still lost. We do have great supplements, we have great resources, but it's still a lot of work left to help guide people to where they need to be, and to be able to buy the right product for them and use it appropriately. Um, that's a lot of work. And that's why a lot of supplement companies also just sell direct, to doctors only. But I quickly realized that selling supplements to doctors only didn't really, I mean,
not
we
even
sell to a lot of doctors, and all over the world, and I appreciate that significantly, but there's a lot of people who don't have access to doctors. And so I want to have the supplements accessible to them
right.
who don't have access to good doctors. So I feel that I need to educate the public and the health professionals equally. Yeah.
What's your biggest mission in the world? Like, what's the
Oh, I wrote that down and I can't remember what it was, but because we're rebranding right now. And through that rebranding experience came writing our mission statement. And it's basically along the lines of what I just said, of guiding people in helping direct them to be able to confidently understand how to improve whatever they're dealing with in their current situation and resolve it with confidence and with success. So if you're dealing with stress, how do I get over that? If I'm dealing with gut issues, how do I get over that? If I'm dealing with histamine issues or pregnancy issues. And so whatever situation they're in, they can identify that, understand it, which genetics are involved, and then all the different fundamentals they need to do, and then what nutrients they need, and they resolve it. And then they tell somebody else who has that problem, and then they share it and they pass it on. I mean, Seeking Health is quite a big company these days, and we've gotten to this stage because people tell people. It's not because we have banners all over the place and we big marketing campaigns. We've literally grown to the size that we are now because of word of mouth. And that's exactly what I want. I love a grassroots movement. And I love the fact that people like yourself are helping others with our products and having great success with it. And I just want to amplify that even more. Because if people get our products in their hands and it's the right ones for them, for their situation, they're going to have tremendous success. Like a woman just emailed us about a month or so ago, and her husband, I don't know, he's elderly, completely reversed his Lewy body dementia and like scored 100% on his cognitive test. And that just doesn't happen. People don't reverse Lewy body dementia. And, he's been following the Dale Bredesen protocol, who wrote the book End of Alzheimer's. And, he was improving, but not really. And then she learned about optimal focus and acetylcholine and Alzheimer's, and he started taking that in just one capsule, and he said the first dose he took, he felt like a veil lifted. I mean, that is such a powerful term. I mean, imagine experiencing dementia and forgetting everything, including family members or whatever was going on with this gentleman, and then just lights turn on. You're there cognitively, but you just can't make your brain work. Like you're a prison in your own head,
Yeah.
and somebody let him out. That
Amazing.
that's cool. And then in your situation where, you know, families trying to get pregnant and have kids, and I would be at a conference signing books, and there'd be moms and dads holding babies and say, "This is a Seeking Health baby."
Yeah.
That's awesome. So
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
yeah,
And I guess we'll speak again. And
yeah,
I will save this live. I'll upload it on YouTube and I'll send you everything. What I did want to give everybody else was sort of like a cheat sheet of all the things that like we spoke about. I am a very visual learner, and I would probably expect everybody else that follows me that is also a
yeah.
visual learner likes
Agreed.
like cheat sheets. So I thought that
Yeah,
would.
that's something else we're working on too, is visual diagrams and additional visual stuff. In fact, we have a new intern who's working with us who's helping with just that. Yeah.
It's great. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you, Eve.
I hope you have a good night.
You too.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.